Jake Morrison sat in his small office on Gateway 7, staring at the strange object on his desk. It was beautiful and confusing at the same time. The invitation glowed with soft blue light, and symbols he couldn't read danced across its surface like tiny stars. He had been working as a human diplomat for 2 years now. Gateway 7 was a massive space station where different alien species met to talk and trade. Jake's job was to make friends with aliens and help humans get along with other species. It was exciting work, but sometimes very confusing. The invitation had arrived that morning, delivered by a small floating drone. Jake picked it up carefully and pressed the translation button on his desk device. The machine hummed for a moment, then spoke in a flat voice. "Honored guest Jake Morrison, you are invited to the Sacred Union ceremony of House Velthara. Your presence would bring great joy. Please arrive 3 days before the celebration. Signed, Ambassador Zerathil." Jake smiled widely. Zerathil was his friend. They had met 6 months ago during a trade negotiation. The Velkarian ambassador was tall and elegant, with skin that shimmered like pearls and 4 graceful arms. At first, Jake had been nervous around him. Velkarians were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, but Zerathil had been kind and patient, teaching Jake about Velkarian customs and laughing at Jake's terrible jokes. Now Zerathil was inviting him to a wedding on the Velkarian homeworld. Jake felt honored. As far as he knew, no human had ever been invited to such an important Velkarian ceremony before. This could be a big step forward for human and Velkarian relations. Jake pressed the communication button on his desk. A hologram of Zerathil appeared in front of him. The Velkarian's face showed what Jake had learned was a smile. "Jake, my friend, you received the invitation?" Zerathil asked. "Yes, I did. Thank you so much. I would love to come to the wedding," Jake said. Zerathil's expression seemed pleased. "Wonderful. This is a great honor for you. The ceremony is very important in our culture. You will need to arrive early for the preparation rituals." "Preparation rituals?" Jake asked. "Yes, there are several days of ceremonies before the main event. Do not worry. We will guide you through everything. Your participation will be very meaningful," Zerathil explained. Jake nodded, though he didn't fully understand. Alien customs were often complicated.
"Should I bring a gift?"
"That will not be necessary. Your presence is the gift," Zerathil said with a gentle wave of one hand. "I will send you the ceremonial clothes to wear. They are traditional for honored guests." After the call ended, Jake leaned back in his chair. He felt excited and a little nervous. He had attended a few alien celebrations before, but never something this important. He made a mental note to study Velkarian wedding customs before he left. 3 days later, a package arrived. Inside were beautiful robes made of deep blue fabric with silver threads woven in complex patterns. Jake held them up to the light. They were the finest clothes he had ever owned. He also found a small data chip in the package. When he played it, a Velkarian language lesson began. Jake listened carefully, trying to memorize the important phrases. But Velkarian was difficult. The language had sounds that human throats couldn't make properly. Jake would have to rely on his translation device. The night before his departure, Jake packed his bags. He included the robes, his translation device, some human snacks as gifts for new friends, and his camera. He wanted to record everything. As he lay in bed, Jake thought about the adventure ahead. He was going to another world, to witness a ceremony that few humans had ever seen. He would represent all of humanity at this wedding. The responsibility felt heavy but also thrilling. Jake closed his eyes and smiled. Tomorrow his journey would begin. He had no idea that this simple wedding invitation would change his entire life in ways he could never imagine. If someone had told him that he wasn't just going to attend a wedding, but that he would be getting married himself, he would have laughed. But the universe had plans for Jake Morrison that were far stranger than any dream. The shuttle broke through the purple clouds and Jake pressed his face against the window. Below him, Velkara Prime spread out like a dream. Massive towers made of crystal reached up toward the sky, catching the light from 3 distant moons. Gardens floated between the buildings, held up by technology Jake didn't understand. Everything glowed with soft colors. The shuttle landed on a platform high above the city. When the door opened, warm air rushed in, carrying the sweet smell of alien flowers. Jake stepped out carefully, carrying his travel bag. "Jake Morrison. Welcome, welcome." Zerathil came forward, all 4 arms spread wide in greeting. Behind him stood at least 30 other Velcarians, all dressed in elegant robes. Jake bowed the way Zerathil had taught him. "Thank you for inviting me. Your world is beautiful. Come, let me introduce you to the family," Zerathil said, leading Jake toward the waiting group. The introductions took almost an hour. Jake met cousins and aunts and uncles and friends. He tried to remember all the names, but there were too many. What he did notice was how the Velcarian women looked at him. They whispered to each other and giggled softly when he came near. Some of them bowed very deeply, which seemed odd for just a wedding guest. One young Velcarian woman with golden markings on her arms stepped forward. "We are so honored that you accepted," she said in careful English. Her name was Lyra, and she was Zerathil's younger sister. "The honor is mine," Jake replied, wondering why everyone kept using that word, honored. It seemed like more than just politeness. Zerathil guided Jake through the crystal tower to his guest quarters. The room was huge, with windows that showed the whole city below. The bed was large and covered in soft fabrics. Fresh flowers sat on every table, filling the air with gentle perfume. "These are the finest guest chambers," Zerathil explained. "Rest now. Tonight there will be a small dinner to welcome you. Tomorrow the ceremonies begin." After Zerathil left, Jake unpacked his things. He hung up the blue robes and set his translation device on the bedside table. Then he stood at the window watching the strange and beautiful city. Flying vehicles moved between the towers like bright fish in an ocean. Velcarians walked on bridges made of light. Jake felt very far from Earth. For a moment he felt lonely. But then he reminded himself why he was here. This was about building friendship between species. This was important. That evening, Jake put on the blue robes. They fit perfectly and felt comfortable against his skin. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. He looked like he belonged in this alien world. A soft chime sounded at his door. When he opened it, 2 Velcarian women stood there, both smiling warmly. They wore white robes decorated with silver stars. "We are here to escort you to dinner," one of them said. Her name was Sarah, and she had kind eyes. As they walked through the hallways, Jake noticed other Velcarians stopping to stare at him. They bowed respectfully. Some touched their foreheads with their upper hands, which Jake's studies had told him was a sign of deep respect. "Why is everyone being so formal?" Jake asked Sarah. She looked surprised by the question. "Because you are the honored one. You will sit at the high table tonight." Jake felt confused but didn't want to ask more questions and seem rude. Maybe this was just how Velcarians treated all their important guests. The dinner hall took his breath away. Hundreds of Velcarians sat at long tables. At the front of the room, a special table sat on a raised platform. Zerathil waved him forward. Jake climbed the steps and took his seat. To his surprise, 12 young Velcarian women sat at the same table. They were all beautiful, with different colored markings on their skin. They all smiled at him with what looked like happiness and maybe nervousness. The dinner began, and Jake tried exotic foods he had never seen before. The Velcarian women talked to him, asking about Earth and human customs. They seemed fascinated by everything he said. Jake enjoyed himself, thinking how lucky he was to experience this. He had no idea that these 12 women believed they were about to become his wives. Jake woke up early the next morning to the sound of gentle music outside his window. When he looked out, he saw Velcarians gathering in the gardens below, preparing for the day's ceremonies. Colorful banners hung between the crystal towers, and the air smelled like sweet incense. A servant brought him breakfast and helped him dress in the blue robes again. Jake noticed the servant kept bowing and seemed almost afraid to look directly at him. It was strange, but Jake figured it was just Velcarian custom. Zerathil came to collect him mid-morning. "Today you will participate in the blessing ceremonies. They are very old traditions. Just follow my lead and everything will be fine." The first ceremony took place in a circular garden surrounded by fountains. About 50 Velcarians stood in a circle holding hands. Jake was asked to join them. They sang in their language, a beautiful sound that made Jake's chest feel warm. His translation device caught words like unity and blessing and new beginning. After the singing, everyone ate small cakes that tasted like honey and flowers. The 12 women from dinner were there, and they kept staying close to Jake, offering him drinks and making sure he was comfortable. The second ceremony was more active. Jake had to learn a traditional Velcarian dance. It was complicated with many steps and hand movements. The 12 women danced with him, laughing kindly when he made mistakes. A woman named Mira, who had strong arms and confident movements, was especially patient in teaching him. "You are doing well for your first time," Mira said, her hand on his shoulder. "You have good rhythm." Jake blushed a little. "Thank you. I'm trying my best." As the afternoon came, Zerathil led Jake to a special chamber inside the main temple. It was a round room with a domed ceiling painted with stars. In the center was a circle marked on the floor with glowing symbols. "This is the most important pre-ceremony ritual," Zerathil explained. "You will stand in the circle with the chosen ones." "The chosen ones?" Jake asked. Zerathil gestured to the 12 women who were entering the room wearing white robes now. They looked nervous and excited. "Yes, please, step into the circle." Jake did as he was told, standing in the center. The 12 women formed a ring around him, each one holding a small crystal that glowed with inner light. Velkarian elders entered, wearing dark purple robes and carrying bowls of flower petals. The elders began to chant in Old Velkarian. Jake's translation device struggled with the ancient language, giving him broken phrases. "Bond of eternity," "chosen by stars," "unity of souls," "commitment forever." Jake assumed this was some kind of blessing for all wedding guests. He stood still as the elders walked around the circle, sprinkling glowing flower petals over him and the 12 women. The petals floated in the air like tiny fireflies before settling on their shoulders. One of the elders approached Jake directly and placed a hand on his forehead. The Old Velkarian spoke directly to him, and Jake's device translated, "Do you accept, with open heart, these bonds of—" The translation cut out with a beep. The device's battery was running low. Jake made a mental note to charge it later. Not wanting to interrupt the sacred ceremony, Jake simply nodded respectfully. The elder seemed pleased. The 12 women all smiled, and some had tears in their eyes. Jake thought they must be very emotional about their friend's wedding. After the ceremony, there was a feast. Jake sat with the 12 women again, and they seemed even more affectionate now. They touched his hands gently, asked him personal questions about his family and his dreams, and looked at him with soft expressions. Lyra, the engineer, asked him about human technology. Sarah, the artistic one, showed him drawings she had made. Kayla made him laugh with funny stories. Each woman was interesting and kind in her own way. As the evening ended, Jake returned to his quarters feeling happy. The Velkarians had welcomed him so warmly. He felt like he was truly part of something special. He plugged in his translation device to charge and fell asleep quickly, tired from all the dancing and ceremonies. Outside his window, the 3 moons rose over the crystal city, and somewhere in the palace, the 12 women talked excitedly about their new husband, while Jake dreamed peacefully, having no idea what he had agreed to. The morning of the main ceremony arrived with great excitement. Jake could hear music and celebration sounds throughout the crystal palace. Servants rushed through the hallways carrying flowers and decorations. Everyone seemed happy and busy. Jake dressed in his blue robes one more time, making sure everything looked perfect. This was the big day, the actual wedding. He wanted to represent humanity well. He checked his translation device, which was fully charged now, and headed out. Zerathil met him in the hallway, looking magnificent in golden robes. "Today is the day, my friend. Are you ready?" "Absolutely." "Where is the ceremony being held?" Jake asked. "At the ancient amphitheater." "It is our most sacred place," Zerathil said, his voice full of pride. They traveled by floating vehicle to the edge of the city. The amphitheater was carved into the side of a mountain, with thousands of seats circling a central stage. The 3 moons were visible in the purple sky above, even though it was daytime. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful. Thousands of Velkarians were already seated, all wearing their finest clothes. Music played from instruments Jake didn't recognize. The air smelled like those sweet alien flowers he was getting used to. Zerathil led Jake to a special seat right at the front, in the most honored position. "You sit here," he said. Jake sat down, feeling a bit uncomfortable being so close to the action. He would have preferred to sit further back, but he didn't want to be rude. The ceremony began with singing. The entire crowd joined in, creating a sound so powerful that Jake felt it in his bones. Then dancers performed, telling stories through movement. Jake watched, amazed by the grace and beauty of it all. Finally, the bride and groom appeared. They walked down a long aisle covered in glowing petals. The bride wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight. and the groom wore deep red robes with gold trim. They looked happy and nervous, just like human couples on their wedding day. The ceremony continued with vows spoken in High Velkarian. Even with his translator, Jake could only understand pieces of it. But he could feel the emotion and importance of the words. The couple exchanged crystal rings that glowed when they touched each other. Then something unexpected happened. The elder performing the ceremony turned toward the audience and called out a name. Jake's translator beeped and he heard, "Jake Morrison." Jake's heart jumped. Why was his name being called? He looked at Zarathil, who was gesturing for him to come forward. Confused but obedient, Jake stood up and walked toward the stage. His legs felt shaky. The crowd went completely silent. Thousands of eyes watched him climb the steps to the stage. The elder smiled at him warmly and said something in Velkarian. Jake's translator spoke, "Now we honor the second union of this sacred day." Second union? Jake's confusion grew, but the ceremony was moving fast. The elder gestured to the side of the stage, and the 12 women he had been spending time with walked out. They wore white robes that seemed to glow in the moonlight. They all looked at Jake with such joy and love that it made his chest tight. The elder held up a beautiful crystal pendant on a silver chain. It was shaped like a star with 12 points, and each point glowed with a different color. The elder spoke again, and Jake's device translated, "Do you, Jake Morrison, accept this sacred bond? Do you accept these 12 souls as yours and give your soul to them? Do you commit to the eternal unity?" Jake's mind raced. This seemed like a very formal question, but he assumed it was part of the ceremony's tradition. Maybe he was being asked to give a blessing? Or accept some kind of honorary position? He didn't want to ruin his friend's wedding by refusing or asking questions in front of thousands of people. Jake took a deep breath and said clearly, "I accept." The crowd erupted in cheers. The 12 women rushed forward, surrounding him with hugs and gentle touches. The elder placed the crystal pendant around Jake's neck. It felt warm against his chest. Music played again, louder and more joyful than before. Flower petals rained down from above. The 12 women held Jake's hands, tears of happiness on their faces. The original bride and groom were also celebrating, looking pleased. Jake smiled and waved to the crowd, still not entirely sure what had just happened, but caught up in the happiness of the moment. The celebration seemed to be for both couples now, which was unusual, but maybe that was Velkarian custom. As he stood on that stage, surrounded by 12 beautiful alien women and thousands of cheering Velkarians, Jake had no idea that he had just gotten married. The crystal pendant around his neck was not a ceremonial gift. It was a wedding symbol, marking him as the husband of 12 wives. After the ceremony, everyone moved to a massive celebration hall for the feast. The room was enormous, with tables stretching as far as Jake could see. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow light across everything. Jake was led to the main table at the front of the hall. He sat down, and the 12 women immediately took seats all around him. They were so close that their shoulders touched his. Servants brought plate after plate of exotic foods and sweet drinks. The women kept touching his arm gently and looking at him with such affection. Lyra fed him a piece of fruit from her own plate. Mira poured his drink with careful attention. Sarah showed him a painting she had made of the 3 moons and said it was a gift for him. "You are all so kind," Jake said, smiling but feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the attention. "Of course we are," said a woman named Kayla, who had a playful smile. "You are our—" She said something in Velkarian that his translator turned into a beeping sound. Jake laughed. "My translator is acting up. What did you call me?" The women all giggled and exchanged glances. "We will explain later," Lyra said softly, patting his hand. Jake noticed that other Velkarians kept coming up to the table to congratulate him. They bowed deeply and said things like, "Such a blessed union, and may your family grow strong." It seemed excessive for just being a wedding guest, but Jake accepted their kind words with grace. After an hour of feasting, Jake saw Zarathil across the room talking to some elders. Jake excused himself from the table and walked over to his friend. He needed to ask about what had happened during the ceremony. "Zarathil, can I talk to you for a moment?" Jake asked. His friend turned around, and Jake was surprised to see a worried expression on the Velkarian's face. "Yes, of course. Let us go somewhere private." They walked to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The celebration sounds faded behind them. Zarathil stood very still, his forearms clasped together nervously. "Jake," Zerathil began slowly. I need to ask you something important. Did you understand what happened today during the ceremony? Jake shrugged. I received a beautiful pendant as a ceremonial gift. It was very generous. Everyone has been so welcoming, and a ceremonial gift? Zerathil's skin changed color, becoming a darker purple. Jake, that was not a gift. That was a bonding pendant. A bonding pendant? Jake repeated, not understanding. Zerathil took a deep breath. Jake, when you accepted that pendant and said, I accept in front of the elders in the crowd, you were not receiving a gift. You were accepting a marriage bond. The words didn't make sense at first. Jake stared at his friend, waiting for him to smile and say it was a joke. But Zerathil looked completely serious, even distressed. Marriage bond? Jake's voice came out as a whisper. What do you mean, marriage bond? You married them, Jake, all 12 of them. Clara, Sarah, Mira, Kayla, Vina, Nara, Tessa, Rila, Zara, Priya, Sula, and Hela. They are now your wives according to Velkarian law. Jake felt like the ground was falling away beneath his feet. His hand went to the crystal pendant around his neck. But I didn't. I thought I was just a guest at your cousin's wedding. You were invited to your own wedding, Zerathil explained, looking miserable. I thought you understood. The invitation, the preparation ceremonies, the blue robes, everything was part of traditional marriage customs. Did your translator not tell you? Jake remembered all the times his translator had malfunctioned or given him incomplete translations. The blessing ceremony where the elders had spoken about eternal bonds. The ritual in the circle with the 12 women. All of it suddenly made horrible sense. I didn't know, Jake said, his voice shaking. I didn't understand. I thought I was just participating in wedding traditions as a guest. Zerathil covered his face with his upper hands. This is terrible. I should have been more clear. I assumed that when you accepted the invitation and came to all the preparation ceremonies, you knew what they meant. Jake's mind raced with questions. Can we undo this? Can we explain it was a mistake? Zerathil looked pained. Jake, you accepted the bond in front of thousands of witnesses. You wore the ceremonial robes. You completed all the rituals. By our law, you are married. Breaking such a bond, he paused. It would be a grave dishonor. It could damage relations between our species. Jake leaned against the balcony railing, trying to breathe normally. He had come to an alien world for a wedding. Instead, he had accidentally married 12 alien women. He was a husband, 12 times over. The 3 moons shone above the city, beautiful and alien, and Jake's life had just become far more complicated than he ever could have imagined.